Hello, I'm Randall Sherman, Secretary-Treasurer of the Illinois Committee for Honest Government. I'm here today to host the Issue Forum. Our regular host, Frank Avila, is off today, busy, and is providing legal services on behalf of the people in a variety of ways. He'll be back next time. Today we're going to do a program talking about how the Internet has changed politics and how Internet sites, whether it be blogging or websites or even shows like this that go on the Internet now, have changed the political scene. We have three guests. First, we have Craig Gernhardt, otherwise known as Mr. Broken Heart, who has a site, the Broken Heart, Morris Hellhole, the Broken Heart of Rogers Park.
Thanks for having me, Randall.
Okay, then next to him is Steve Rhodes, the mastermind behind the Beechwood Reporter, and talk about how that deals not just in politics but in other aspects of life. And finally, a good friend and colleague on CAN TV, Jeff Berkowitz, who hosts his own show here on CAN TV. When's that on?
Public Affairs every Monday night at 8:30 on cable channel 21, CAN TV, and also in many suburbs on the North Shore and Northwest, and also in Aurora, and often on the Illinois Channel. And, of course, on publicaffairs.tv.com, which is our podcast page, and you can usually see that often before the show is actually airing in the city or the suburbs.
That is a key factor, because this program here, in addition to eventually airing on either CAN TV's channel 19 or 21, will be available on the Internet in a very short span of time, long before it gets on the air. And you just have to do a Google video search to Inside Politics, Issue Forum, and just look for any of our names and do a search for any of our names, Randall Sherman, and you'll be able to find this program, and we can then watch it at your convenience, not necessarily at the time the cable channel puts it on, and then you can enjoy it and have people who aren't in the cable area watch it as well. Well, let's get started. Craig, your area is concentrating on a specific geographic area, East Rogers Park, the 49th Ward, generally. Tell us about your background, what got you started in doing this site.
Initially, it started out as basically a community activist, going to hundreds of meetings and getting involved in either the CAPS program, some development that was going on.
Wait, for those who aren't familiar, obviously I used to live in that area. Explain to our viewers what area we're talking about.
Rogers Park is the far end north of the city, 49th Ward. Basically, it's Joe Moore's area, which I concentrate on the ward itself. I really don't go outside of the ward boundaries. I'm focused on, what our alderman does for our community.
Or doesn't.
Or doesn't do.
And so, okay, so you started focusing, going to CAPS meeting. So what made you decide to go beyond that to put together this site?
Just tired of having the politicians and community leaders blowing smoke up my ass, and that you get 20 people in a community meeting and they get told what the alderman wants to tell them, and they don't want to. The alderman doesn't want to listen to the community.
And many of those are probably his people who are at the.
Yeah, for the most part, these meetings are the same 20 people over and over. We're a ward of close to 60,000 people, and 20,000 are registered to vote. Numbers go lower where actually 7,000 actually vote, and we have 20 people that participate in community issues. The numbers, the ward is really stagnant, and it seems like we're basically stuck in the 60s, and I try to get the information out in the 21st century, whereas they're still busy chiseling it on a stone tablet and passing it around to each other.
Well, we want to point out that this ward has had particular problems in terms of being at the bottom of voter registration, voter turnout, pluralities for well over a decade. part because it is home of the Loyola University community. It has a
Very
far,
transient with
yes, far
university students that come in and out every 4 years. We've got a new batch of students.
Not to mention the fact that they'll often move from year to year, and many of them don't realize they have to re-register once you move from Site A off campus to Site B off campus.
And the Loyola students, for the most part, really don't care about local issues. The last time I saw the Loyola students actually get involved in a campaign was for Obama. Yeah, they came out and registered to vote, got active in the politics, and that's a candidate that attracts the youth. We've got a candidate in the 49th Ward that attracts the old hippies, that, you know, the liberal hippies, that we're going to go out and pound our drums, but they don't do anything. They pound drums and make smoke, but nothing gets done. Yeah, and making silly legislation. Joe Moore is just one of the absolute silliest legislation people I've ever seen. You know, the big box ordinance that he drew up was not done right. You know, it wasn't thought through. It was a grandstand issue. And so was Fagra.
Yeah. Steve, now you created the Beechwood Reporter. Tell me what got you started there, and how how that differs from a website like a blog site like Craig's.
Well, I'd previously spent 20 years in newspapers and magazines in the mainstream media at Chicago Tribune, Newsweek, Chicago Magazine. And right before the Beechwood Reporter, I was at Chicago Magazine for 6 years covering politics and media. And I was really, by the end there, really just looking for a change and to do something different, but also very eager to get onto the internet where all the action is going on. I think that's where our political life and our democracy is playing out. It's the new public space, I think. And to me, newspapers and magazines and traditional print has seen the internet as a threat, and they've feared it and don't understand it. I see it as the next great frontier of reporting and journalism. Not everything or most of what's on the internet right now necessarily is reporting and journalism, but I think that's the direction that it has to go. And it's been a tremendous tool for people like Craig, for example, to empower anyone who wants to be involved and to publish and to engage in their communities and so forth. What I do is a little different than a blog per se. I consider what I do more of a site that may at some point have blogs on it. And what I mean by that is I'm not continually publishing. We publish every day and put new stories up. We generally don't have commenting. We're not necessarily, our form in some ways, a blog per se, but I mean, we're pretty close, and people call us bloggers.
So what exactly, so for instance, whereas Craig will be concentrating on whatever, you know, happens in the 49th Ward, in that area, East Rogers Park, where it be some crime report or community meeting. Give us an example of what would be featured in the Beechwood Reporter.
Well, what we do is a little bit different. I write a daily column called The Papers, which is kind of a review of what's in the Chicago papers. It's a combination of media criticism and some political and cultural analysis. And then we do other things. We have sections like music and TV and something we call People, Places, and Things, where we do columns like one of our more popular columns was Barista, which was an anonymous worker at a well-known but unnamed corporate coffee chain, writing about the tales of what it's like to work there. And so we're really trying to create it's a Chicago-centric kind of online magazine-y kind of thing, and I hope that we can move into reporting more than we do now. But we have more of a broader Chicago view.
So who besides yourself, how many people do you rely on for the information that you put in there?
Well, we've got about a dozen hardcore contributors and then about another dozen people kind of circling around the edges. We've had a lot of people come in and out, but a lot of people who've been with us from the beginning, turning out great material, and everyone is a volunteer right now, but we're working on our business plan and trying to push forward in that way.
Jeff, you look at sites like these, and I mean you've been doing your programming for how many years now?
Program for about 10 years, the blog for about 3 years.
So so obviously have seen things develop, in terms of finding more additional news sites, more options for information about communities, about so that people who feel that they've been are strangled in a sense in terms of information from having to rely on the quote mainstream media.
Right. I mean, what I found, I mean, this led to blogging, but the TV program really led to this. So I've seen it evolve. It led to what I'm doing now with the blog, but it also led to my podcast page, which I didn't have originally. So starting out with a little show out in the suburbs that hit 10 suburbs, we then expanded it to 34 suburbs, then into the city of Chicago, and then to Aurora. It's become a bigger deal, and along the way, it started out as more of what Craig is describing, his focus on the 49th Ward. Our focus was on 8 or 9 suburbs, a portion, maybe the 9th and the 10th Congressional District, and a few state rep, state senator. But as you expand the audience, more people in the suburbs from other areas, so we started hitting other state rep, state senators. As we got to the city, aldermen and people like that were getting on, and statewide, people running statewide. And what we found is there's a niche here. The commercial market in Chicago, nobody wants to do a half-hour serious public affairs show these days. And so we were about the only show that were giving politicians an opportunity to do serious discussion of politics for half an hour.
But do you get serious discussion from them?
Well, I'll give you an example. In 2001, one of our guests was Barack Obama, a little-known state senator at that time, and we devoted a half an hour talking to Barack, I did, about racial profiling. In 2002, in all modesty, I'm the only person who asked Barack Obama what he would have done if he were in the Congress at that time in terms of voting on the so-called War Powers Resolution, something that Barack and others will now cite to say, you see, I would have voted against that at that time because he said it on Public Affairs to Jeff Berkowitz in November of 2002. And to see how this all ties together, I didn't put it up there, but it's now up on YouTube. Somebody picked it up somewhere else. And so you see the impact that that these folks to my left can have, and other bloggers. The recent example with the Sun-Times columnist Jennifer Hunter wrote a little column about somebody she interviewed as they were leaving the Trial Lawyers Association and so forth. And she described this person as a staunch Republican. Bloggers jumped all over it and did simple searches, which apparently Jennifer Hunter, Sun-Times columnist, hadn't done, to show that 90% of this guy's contributions were previously to Democrats, not to Republicans. So my point is, Hunter never retracted that, but everybody knew because of bloggers, I wrote on that, but so did many others, because of bloggers, that the whole damn thing was wrong. And if you didn't have that 10 years ago, media don't really do a lot of self-criticism of other media. They talk about the blue coat for cops. It's worse on the media. So without the bloggers, Hunter would have said something that was inaccurate and it would have gone. Bloggers are now a main check on the mainstream media.
It's pretty good.
As you mentioned, it happened right here in the 2007 election, the 49th Ward. His Alderman Joe Moore chose to take little bits out of certain bloggers' blog sites, twist their words around, and make a independent Democrat running against him, and using $600,000 to $900,000, turn this independent Democrat into a Republican. Joe Moore and his people use some of the liberal blogger techniques to go against and attack a candidate. It works both ways.
Well, but the main thing, your point, though, is it's now blogging as a force. Technology like what I'm doing and what you're doing, what we're doing right now, it's so much slow. So the cost of putting together this television program is so much lower. You know, we can beat Chicago Tonight. I can say that if they're watching it now, in terms of the quality we put forth of a half-hour interview. One way we beat them is because Chicago Tonight, which used to be a half-hour interview every day with John Calloway, no longer does it. They've decided the most they're going to devote to public affairs programming out of their hour show is 15 minutes. So we beat them every time we show up, and they don't, okay? And that's public TV. So if public TV isn't doing it, can you imagine what commercial TV is doing?
Well, they're not going to. You can't expect them to criticize somebody like Ms. Hunter. You know, after all, she is.
Why can't we expect them?
Because they're doing business with the Sun Times, and she's married.
She also happens to
publisher.
be the husband, the wife.
I
of the
have no
publisher.
problems on my end, is because I don't take advertising. My blog is focused very locally. Today I went after the 800-pound gorilla in Loyola University with
Explain what happened.
Supposedly, there was an email that went out to some Loyola students and faculty that a computer that just happened to disappear. They didn't know what happened to it, but it contained the data of 5,800 students and their social security
Excuse
numbers.
me?
Yes, it just disappeared. So anyhow, they sent out a sanitized press release giving it's no big deal, we'll check your credit, we don't know where the computer's, but it's not in bad hands. Well, it turns out that the computer actually did get stolen from the IT room, and it wasn't an obsolete computer like they claimed, but an active computer that was going through what they call redeployment. Someone loses their job, they retire, they take their computer off the desk, take it down to the IT, and clean it out, and then move it to another person that may take that desk. This person just happened to have 5,800 social security numbers on that particular computer. No other media picked that up except for my blog. And, you know, it's a little story in Rogers Park that almost got passed up. Now it's being picked up on the radio, and some of the TV reports are covering it. But that is one of those stories that probably would have got swept underneath the rug had a blogger not got it out. My site happens to get read by the Tribune reporters, Sun-Times reporters, City Hall. I have downstate. I see the IP addresses show up. Federal government, HUD, Realtors Associations. They all read my site and keep track of what's going on. Joe Moore may not care about what's going on, but the people downtown in the various departments do. And then when they see gangbangers selling drugs on Morse Avenue, they're going to take more of an interest than, say, someone just wrote a letter, when they actually can see the video of what's going on.
Well, and I think the important thing here that both of these guys are alluding to is that there's a vacuum being filled here that the mainstream media has. They've retracted their coverage, and so Chicago Tonight going from 30 minutes to 15 minutes on their news segment means there's an opportunity for someone else to step in and provide that kind of coverage. The newspapers not covering the neighborhoods in Chicago provides an opportunity for someone like Greg. And if you look at every state and every major city around the country has these kinds of blogs, state political blogs, city blogs that are doing more of the things that I'm doing. And it's interesting to me that the mainstream media has punted on this opportunity. I mean, there's no reason why, if the people at the Trib and the Sun-Times and so on had been thinking innovatively and imaginatively, they would have been doing this sort of thing. They would have gotten there first.
I think they're catching up a little bit. I mean, the Tribune has started putting their editorial board interviews of candidates on their website,
Yes.
their videos of those. And so they're starting to realize they have untapped potential that people would probably pay for to see Rod Blagojevich interviewed by their edit board.
Absolutely.
And so when they figure out how to charge for that stuff and start generating revenue, you know, some of the blogs may end up getting co-opted and become a part of that commercial market. The point is, what you're seeing is the benefits of competition and free enterprise. Nobody quite knows where it's going. The ironic thing at this recent yearly Coast Convention, which attracted all but one of the Democratic presidential candidates, these folks were also walking around lamenting the concentration of power and consolidation of power in the establishment television market, not realizing the kind of power they had to attract 7 Democratic presidential candidates. In other words, the blogosphere is an offset to Rupert Murdoch and the News Corporation.
And
Those folks didn't realize it.
And along that lines is the newspapers, they're struggling financially. Recently, the Reader was sold. Now it's going to be published outside of our state, so it won't be a local alternative weekly anymore, in a sense, where the people that do all the design and graphics are going to be out of jobs. We've just recently seen where both the Sun-Times and Tribune have claimed that the readership is diminishing.
Yeah, I can't imagine why. It's, they're doing such a bang-up job.
And now we see that the Tribune and Sun-Times are joining forces to deliver together. The consolidation of the major media doesn't give them a chance to focus so much on local issues. They're more focused on national issues, and advertisers.
They're focusing on the almighty buck.
That's the bottom line. And for me, I do it for the love of the neighborhood. There's no money involved. I spend 3 to 4 hours a day on my website. I happen to be in the print business myself. I publish Gay Chicago Magazine. It's a weekly gay news and entertainment alternative magazine, and we struggle too. But we have been around for 31 years, and we built up a nice, strong advertising base where, me being the publisher at this state, I'm able to give back to the community, and it's almost, volunteer effort, and, Gay Chicago pays for the Broken Heart to be published.
Well, what made you decide? I was scared. People are wondering. What made you decide, the title, The Broken Heart, or how that came about?
The Heartland Cafe, and Katie Hogan and Michael James. These two liberals got their heads stuck in the sand. They got a little radio program, The Heartland, that's the name of their cafe, The Heartland. We're the heart of Rogers Park. They make it seem like this is a vibrant, beautiful, beating heart. And in reality, it's a cancerous heart that needs repair.
Now I believe we
the broken heart, for that matter.
I believe we have we have some pictures and such that were taken off your website, and can we go to those right now without further ado, and then you could describe to our audience what exactly we'll be seeing.
This particular one is it's a nice graffiti, is what I'll call it. It's we've had our neighborhoods tagged with gang graffiti, the Gangster Disciples, the Latin Kings, and here this guy had his van tagged with I think it's called the Insane Black Mafia. And he had enough
As opposed to the same Black Mafia?
Yeah, well, that's a gang that's been busted up around the Potawatomi Park area. It's a very dangerous gang. But this guy had enough of them tagging his vehicle. He covered it up and made a quote by Cicero, about empowering yourself. And I took that. That's one of my good news stories that people always ask me to do on my blog is, why don't you do a good news story? Or here's a guy who empowered himself enough to say, screw the IBMs or whatever that gang was called. This is my message to you.
Okay, continue. Next one.
Katie Hogan and Michael James, the Red Line Tap. Interesting story here, guys. Katie Hogan's on a special service area tax, which it's basically a street tax, and she's a commissioner of it. And part of their initiative, being a commissioner, is telling people how to make their storefronts look all nice.
Now, I assume she got this courtesy of some good words of the alderman.
Well, yes, a special service area tax is rammed through the community. It's like a TIF. It's one of these little slush funds that pretty much goes unmonitored, even though they claim there's a commissioner that watch over it. Well, this photo here, for example, was initially, I felt she was hypocritical telling other businesses how their storefronts should look, but she had a broken window on her own bar. This broken window stood broken for 5 months and wouldn't replace it. So I decided to start putting the photo up on the website and chiding her a little bit about the situation, just as I explained to you. Well, a couple days later, after the second notice on the website, she got her window fixed.
What a coincidence.
It's public humiliation works pretty well.
All right, what do we have here? Voted dry.
That was the Granville area. I actually got outside of Rogers Park a little bit, but I think that corner is in the 49
the 49-4 does go down to to Granville over on the between the Broadway and the L track. So
this particular story was regarding neighbors had just had enough of a couple bad businesses that were selling to the bums, to the gangs, and the gangs, no sooner they'd buy their stuff, would just hang out in front of the storefront and sell their drugs. The bums would go and pee and piss in the alleys, crap sometimes. The neighbors had had enough, and one of the neighbors happened to be part of a law firm, spent a couple of years and really put it on the ballot first to vote dry. The liquor companies helped the little ma-pa stores fight the battle to stay open for a couple of years, but the community really stuck it out, closed 2 liquor stores. That's the power of community activism.
Next one.
Again, boy, you really want to focus on Michael James and Katie Hogan. This happens to be one of our street cart vendors that is unlicensed, and she stores her syrup and all the food cart food in the back of Michael James's 5-car garage and behind his house.
Is that zoned for such thing?
I highly doubt it. And this is one of these issues where Michael James is very close with Alderman Moore, so a lot of Michael James's problems, he calls the alderman, and the alderman helps him kind of stay out of trouble.
And the problems magically disappear, I guess.
Yeah, well, then this case here is I hadn't seen much activity on it, but basically, here you got someone who's serving food to the public and storing it in a garage that's got wooden garage. The bottom of the wood is all rotted out where rats can run in and mingle with the food.
I think I see enough. Next one, Blaze.
Oh, boy. This is part of the issues we deal with the street people, the gangs, the homelessness, and unfortunately we have a big problem with homeless in Rogers Park. They get pushed out of, Mayor Daley doesn't like the homeless downtown. And he finds wards that are accepting for it. Rogers Park.
If it's dumping ground because you have the fewest number of voters of any ward on the north side, so
let's dump them in Rogers Park.
That's where you're going to dump it in.
Right.
Finally, the Broken Heart itself.
Yeah, well, this is a very, sophomoric-looking logo, but I put it together. I'm not going to change it. I like my website the way it is. I get complaints that I'm too simple, and I just like it the way it is. That's Mr. Broken Heart.
But it is a distinctive. No, it's your identifying mark. Steve, do you have any identifying symbols that are quite as dramatic as that Broken Heart yet?
Boy, I'd like to have a broken heart on my site. Our hearts are broken too, maybe for different reasons. I think we have got some identifying symbols. Our front page does have a photo of our news director, Les Nessman, and he's the winner of several Buckeye News Hawk Awards, and we're proud to have him.
Well, that's dating ourselves a little bit, Jeff, you just put yourself on there. The cover.
Well, we do have a logo that says Public Affairs with Jeff Berkowitz. That's how we refer to the show, and that's a good reminder. So if people want to see it and they're not in our viewing audience for some reason, or they missed the show, you can always watch it at www.publicaffairstv.com. And it's what we said. What Eric Zorn, who helped me start this blog, when he wrote about the show 4 or 5 years ago, what was notable in his mind is that you'd get, as he put it, these big shots like then Rahm Emanuel, who was running at that time. Last time we had him on was when he was running in the 5th Congressional District Democratic primary, which was actually a reasonably close race between the now star in the country, whatever we want to call Rahm Emanuel, and Nancy Kasich.
Yeah, that was, of course, before he got pushed into victory through the help of people like convicted felon Don Tomzak and company, and the infamous members of the infamous HDO.
Well, he claims he knows nothing about it. But my point is, what Zorn said is,
Of course, he was too busy. He was too busy. He was too busy kissing babies and shaking hands or something.
but our motto is we knock politicians off their talking points and get them to answer our questions. Just the other, when the AFL-CIO debate was here and carried by MSNBC, they had a spin room, and some of the candidates came in after, had an opportunity to do a short interview with Senator Chris Dobbs, and I asked him Chris Dodd, excuse me.
Connecticut, yeah.
And I said to him a few times now, wasn't covered about tax cuts, nobody talked about the Bush tax cuts, would you favor repealing all those cuts? And I had to ask him about 2 or 3 times, but I did get an answer. And that's a little different. If you watch the mainstream media, they often ask questions, politician doesn't answer it, and they just go on. So it seems odd.
Go on to the next one.
That's a good point.
Zorn noticed this was a novel approach of Berkowitz, as he actually kept asking until he got an answer. This says something about the mainstream media journalism that we see here.
How long did this dialogue go along?
With Senator Dodd?
To
Well,
finally
actually,
get it.
it's kind of interesting if you watch the clip, which is only about 2 minutes. His handler is gently pushing him out as he sees he's facing somebody who wants to get answers to questions. Oh, I think there's somebody here we have to talk to. So it was 2 minutes. Same thing with Reverend Jesse Jackson when I happened to ask him about, the new guy in town, Al Sharpton, and Jesse was sort of easing out of the frame. And so, but to his credit, he came back and we had an interview. So, but my point is not that I'm a great guy, but if you're loosened from the constraints, which apparently the mainstream media seem and the networks put on their journalists, is you got to be nice to these folks so they'll come back. Mm-hmm. The point they don't realize is nobody's watching them because you're so nice to them that it's a very boring interview.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
I
And
what's
have
the
the
point,
same
then?
What's the point?
situation with Alderman Moore. Joe won't talk to me on camera. He wants to give interviews off camera in his own environment with his handlers. So I like to catch him out on the street with my camera, and I've got a running series. I'm up to 3 parts now where he will not talk. He'll look down. I won't talk to. He'll say, I won't talk to the camera. Craig, I'm not talking to you. And it's embarrassing to watch him not want to answer a question like, why is there crime on Morse Avenue? Why are you supporting Barack Obama when the 49th Ward committeeman has not made a decision yet? We haven't voted on the issue, but he's already got the whole 49th Ward committee going out to support Barack.
That should be worth about 8 votes, considering the way. But I mean, you got to
But he
understand.
won't talk about
Well,
it.
you gotta
Let me say in
you know,
defense of Joe Moore, he came on Public Affairs and answered questions for a half an hour, and he did that twice. He's often on Tom Roser's show, which is, Tom's not known as a leftist.
You guys don't talk about local issues, though. You guys are talking
we're
about
talking about the things that
the pig
living
box.
wage.
Talk
Well,
about
those are
the
important.
crime on Morse Avenue. Howard, talk about the empty storefronts all up and down. Talk about the slumlord that had the house that was burned that killed 6 children. He won't talk about those issues. This guy, slumlord, the house that burned down, killed 6 children, caused by a fire. The candle, the house did not have electricity. His landlord knew it. His landlord was a good friend of Joe Moore's. You know the story. And
Yeah,
Jay Johnson.
well, you got to understand that Moore, a long time ago, realized that a number of things. One of which is that he got the motto that he'll never tell the truth when a lie will serve him better.
That's a perfect quote about Joe Moore.
And but we do, because we only have a minute.
I got to say, I like Joe Moore because he comes on Public Affairs.
Well, come on.
Next time, let's get
But
together.
Barack
I'll give you
Obama,
a nice sheet of.
But there are people who do
questions
this.
to ask them.
Obama came on 6 times. Haven't had him on since 2004. But there was a guy who was willing to go out and into the hinterland and answer questions on a broad range of domestic and foreign policy issues. Bill Richardson is running for president. Gave us a 15-minute interview, which is people can watch again by going to publicaffairs.tv.com. So, folks, I mean, these people, Rod Blagojevich, who you've criticized from time to time, did a show with us in the 2002 primary. He didn't have to do it, and he did it. So there are lots of these folks. I mean, I've been critical about some for not doing it, but there are lots of big-time politicians who do actually enjoy a challenging discussion. I can't think of else why they're coming on. Mm-hmm. And those folks deserve a lot of credit. Rahm Emanuel deserved credit for coming on during the primary. Nancy Kasich, who perhaps needed it more, didn't come on. So you don't want to slam all of these folks.
Oh,
There are a lot of good big name politicians who, in my book, are willing to come on and
Okay,
discuss issues.
quickly, Steve, give your site one more time.
Beechwoodreporter.com.
Greg?
You just Google search the Broken Heart of Rogers Park. It'll show up. It's the morsehellhole.blogspot.com.
And you're on one?
Jeffberkowitz.blogspot.com. That's the blog. TV show, www.publicaffairs.tv.com. If you forget all that, Google Jeff Berkowitz. The first 5 out of the 10 people you see will be this Jeff Berkowitz.
This is Randall Sherman from the Illinois Committee for Honest Government. Until next time, thank you for watching.